I've explained this to you 1,000 times. Beverly has cancer and only a year left. Her biggest wish is to leave her family with a child. She saved my life once, and now I have to help her fulfill this wish. I'd heard this script from Dominic Pearson countless times over the past 2 weeks. When he first proposed the idea, I'd shut it down immediately. But he wouldn't drop it, nagging me daily. His tone had shifted too, from tentative pleading to righteous anger, as if I were the villain for refusing. Since when did repaying a life debt require fathering a child? Consistent arguments had drained me. I no longer had the energy to reason with him. Instead, I stared at the man I'd loved for 5 years and asked, voice trembling, Dominic, our wedding is in 2 weeks. Now you want to have a baby with another woman? What am I to you? For the first time, Dominic seemed to notice the storm cloud of despair hanging over me. His tone softened slightly. Jane, I know this is hard. But I'm the only one who can help Beverly. I can't let her die with this regret. It's just IVF, nothing will happen between us. If you love me, you'll understand. My heart plummeted. It was clear he'd already made up his mind. My feelings were irrelevant. Dominic opened his mouth to continue, but a phone ring cut him off. He glanced at the screen and stepped onto the balcony. Watching his retreating figure, I smiled bitterly. Dominic and I had grown up together, same classes since elementary school, same college. I'd loved him silently for years, but he'd never noticed. Until graduation, when he finally acknowledged my devotion and agreed to date. You'd think after 20 years, we'd trust each other completely. Yet in 5 years as a couple, I'd never once touched his phone. He took every call in secret. Once, while he lay feverish in bed, his phone buzzed nonstop. I tried to mute it, but the moment my finger grazed the screen, he woke up and accused me of snooping. No explanation helped. I spent that night alone on the couch. I told myself it was just his guarded nature, that someday, I'd earn his trust. But 5 years changed nothing. Now he wanted a child with another woman, indifferent to how his actual fiancé might feel. When Dominic returned, he was grinning. He grabbed his jacket and headed for the door. I need to go. Think about what I said. His hurried footsteps echoed. Only one person made him rush like that, Beverly. Sure enough, minutes later, Beverly sent a photo. When I zoomed in, my legs nearly gave out. It was a prenatal report, and the patient's name was Beverly. The listed conception date made my head spin. 3 weeks pregnant. Which meant Dominic and Beverly had undergone IVF over a month ago. He'd never planned to discuss this with me, never intended to ask for my consent. So why had he hounded me about it daily? To absolve his guilt? What did I even mean to him? My legs buckled, and I sank to the floor. I felt my heart clenched, strangling every breath. No wonder Dominic had rushed out earlier, grinning like a fool after that call. He'd known. They did a good job. Beverly was pregnant. He was probably at the hospital with her now, clinking champagne glasses over their twisted miracle. I pressed my palms against my eyelids, but the image of that report burned brighter. How could the man I'd loved for decades become another woman's child's father? 2 months ago, he tearfully accepted my proposal. I'd booked the cathedral and chosen a lace gown for our wedding. I'd imagined his hands steadying mine as we cut the cake. Now those fantasies popped like soap bubbles, leaving only acid in my throat. My phone buzzed, jolting me back. I answered mechanically. Jane. Emily's voice crackled with excitement. I know it's last minute, but Dr. Evans begged me to ask again, will you join the chrysalis lab? You'd revolutionize his research. 6 months ago, Dr. Evans had personally offered me the role. The catch? Total isolation, no calls, no emails, no contact for months or even years. Back then, I'd refused. The thought of losing Dominic terrified me more than missing a Nobel-worthy breakthrough. He's willing to compromise. Emily rushed on. 2 months in the lab, 2 weeks off. You'd still have time for Dominic. Dominic. The name now tasted like rust. My eyes drifted to the desk calendar. October 10th, once circled in glittery pink, now glared back in harsh red Sharpie. 15 days until my wedding. 15 days until freedom. I'll join, I cut in, voice steadier than I felt. No compromises. Full protocol. But your honeymoon. Schedule me for the 10th. Silence. Then a soft click as Emily hung up, too tactful to ask why I'd chosen my wedding day. I traced the calendar's red ring. 15 days to grieve 20 years of love. 15 days until I vanished into a lab, and Dominic Pearson became a ghost. Dominic didn't come home that night, and I didn't call to ask where he was. I'd already seen Beverly's social media updates. After leaving the hospital, they'd rushed to her family's house to announce the pregnancy. In the photos, Beverly's grandmother clasped Dominic's hand warmly while he rested his other palm on Beverly's belly, smiling like a doting husband. For 5 years together, Dominic had only visited my family once, after accepting my proposal. Despite living just 30 minutes away, he'd never bothered before, claiming he felt awkward around elders. Even that single visit had been stiffly polite, nothing like the tender ease he showed with Beverly's family. I swallowed the bitterness and turned off my phone. The next day, I met friends to break the news about canceling the wedding. Dominic had always hated ceremonies, calling them pointless pomp. I'd fought to keep ours small, just close family and friends. Now, their shocked reaction stung. You've loved him for decades. You finally bagged your hard-to-get prince and you're just letting go? Letting go. The words needled me. Of course it wasn't easy. 20 years of chasing him, only to walk away weeks before our vows. But I'd finally accepted the truth, this relationship had always been one-sided. Dominic never paused his stride for me. I deluded myself into thinking time would wear down his walls, that marriage would force his heart open. Then Beverly arrived 6 months ago, his lifesaver, and everything cracked. I watched him laugh with her, soften for her, care for her in ways he'd never shown me. Even his coldness toward my family vanished around hers. When she was diagnosed with cancer, he didn't hesitate, IVF, a child, a twisted happily ever after. I didn't explain the details to my friends. Just said I'd joined a closed-off research lab and would vanish for years. To soften the blow, I drank with them until midnight. When I stumbled home, Dominic had just returned. He recoiled at the smell of alcohol, covering his nose like I'd brought in sewage. Stay back. I don't want that stench on me. I almost laughed. Of course. Beverly's pregnant, can't risk contaminating the sacred air. But I said nothing, showered, and headed to bed. As I passed the living room, Dominic was typing furiously on his phone, grin brighter than our engagement photos. I kept walking, until his voice froze me. We need to talk. The last time he'd said that, he dropped the "I want to make a baby with my ex-bomb." Now, with Beverly already pregnant, what fresh hell awaited? I can't take wedding photos with you tomorrow. My eyes flicked to the calendar where photoshoot glared under tomorrow's date. I had no idea why Dominic wanted to cancel. Honestly, I didn't want to get married anyway. Even if Dominic hadn't said anything, I would have found an excuse to call it off. His suggestion was a huge relief. I nodded. Okay, I'll call the photographer and cancel it. The words were barely out when Dominic's eyes widened. He hadn't expected such a quick, easy agreement. He'd probably anticipated questions, a whole interrogation. After all, I'd meticulously planned every detail of the wedding, spending ages researching. Even the photographer for the shoot was a pricey last-minute addition, secured only after I'd significantly increased the fee to jump the queue. He'd expected a fight. Instead, I was calm. Dominic looked at me, his expression a confusing mix of emotions. Don't cancel, he said. Beverly said she'll probably never get married, and she wants to take wedding photos with me, you know, like she's actually been married. It would mean a lot to her, he explained. Let's have Beverly join us tomorrow, and we can reschedule our photos later. His tone was casual, as if discussing dinner plans, just like the day he'd announced his plans for having a child with Beverly. It was a discussion in form only, his decision was already made. He was simply informing me. My lowered gaze hid the sarcasm welling up inside. Later? Dominic didn't know I only had 13 days left at Concordia. He didn't know there wouldn't be a later. I quietly agreed and went to bed. The wedding was off. Who Dominic took photos with was none of my business. Dominic watched me go, a vague unease settling in his gut. My calm acceptance, the lack of any protest, left him speechless. All his carefully prepared arguments were useless. Then Beverly called, and he immediately forgot his worries, heading to the balcony to take the call. I woke up just as Dominic was leaving. After the photos, Beverly and I are going on a short trip, he said, lacing up his shoes. She's always wanted to go to Hokkaido. Let's keep the wedding simple. I won't have time for rehearsals or decorations. You decide everything, no need to check with me. Okay, I replied, swallowing a bite of toast. Simple. No wedding photos, no guests, no officiant. No bride. Dominic noticed my quiet breakfast, a strange feeling growing inside him. He hesitated, then added, let's go to Europe for our honeymoon after the wedding. You always wanted to go. In the past, the offer of a honeymoon would have sent me into a frenzy of planning. I'd always wanted to travel with him, but he'd always refused, claiming he didn't enjoy it and found it too tiring. Now, I just concentrated on my breakfast, saying nothing. No wedding, no honeymoon. Dominic looked at me, surprised. He started to speak, but glanced at the clock, then rushed out, muttering, I'll talk to you later. I picked up the calendar and drew a large X over wedding photos. 12 days left. After breakfast, I started packing, clearing out unnecessary things. A photo album with fewer than 5 pictures, a dusty projector, unworn matching pajamas. 5 years together. Every item in the house was carefully chosen, transforming an empty space into a cozy home. But on closer inspection, much of it was untouched by Dominic. He'd always maintained his independence, even in our relationship, disliking couples' items, feeling they restricted him. I pushed the thought aside and continued cleaning. These things would only bother him after I left, better to get rid of them now. I'd erase our memories, too. For a whole week, Dominic didn't come home. But I knew exactly what he was up to. Beverly, bless her heart, posted everything on social media. It was impossible to miss. Hot springs trips, ocean views, sunrise selfies. My social media feed was flooded with a completely different Dominic. He could be a normal, loving boyfriend. Just not with me. I didn't dwell on their daily adventures, I'd glance, then quickly scroll past. I wasn't idle, though. The apartment was overflowing, and it took days to completely clear it out. I even squeezed in a trip home, telling my parents I was heading to the lab soon and wouldn't have much contact with the outside world for a while. My dad looked surprised. You're practically married to Dominic. Won't you be living apart? Mom's eyes were filled with worry. She took my hand. Jane, honey, think this through. You and Dominic have come so far. If you go to the lab, he might not agree, and the wedding. I understood their concern. They'd witnessed my years of devotion to Dominic, and they knew his feelings weren't reciprocated. Before the proposal, they'd gently advised me, suggesting that I wasn't important enough to him, urging me to reconsider. But I'd been confident I could change him, make him fully accept me. So they'd agreed. Now, with the wedding looming, they feared that if I went to the lab, Dominic would object, maybe even call off the wedding and break up with me. They were worried about me getting hurt, so they wanted me to think carefully. But the one calling off the wedding was me. After I told them about the cancellation, they were silent for a long time. I didn't tell them about Dominic and Beverly's baby, afraid they couldn't handle it. I simply said I wanted to pursue my research. They exchanged a look. Since I'd made my decision, they'd support me. Finally, Dad sighed, patted my shoulder, and said, just make sure you don't regret it. Back home, I called my best friend, Alexa Reeves, to help me get rid of all the packed boxes. They were piled high in the living room, taking up a ton of space. It took several trips up and down the stairs before we finally finished, leaving the apartment feeling strangely empty. Alexa looked thoughtful. Remember 2 months ago, she said, when you were so excited after Dominic accepted your proposal? We celebrated all night, you were so happy to finally get what you wanted. She shook her head. And just 2 months later, you're calling off the wedding? She paused. Seriously? I thought you were joking that day. She leaned in. You've been chasing Dominic for years. Tell me what happened. Maybe it was the impending departure, but I felt the urge to confide. I told Alexa everything that had happened over the past month, including Dominic's baby with Beverly. Alexa, who'd witnessed everything between Dominic and me, let out a string of curses. After everything you did for him, he gets another woman pregnant right before the wedding and expects you to be okay with it. What is wrong with him? I shook my head, swallowing the bitterness. He said Beverly saved his life and he wants to fulfill all her wishes. Alexa was furious. You saved him too. How could he do this to you? I didn't reply. Maybe he just didn't love me. But it didn't matter. Soon, I'd be leaving him behind. Countdown, Day 5. I submitted my resignation to the university. Initially, to be with Dominic, I turned down my advisor's offer to continue research, choosing instead to follow Dominic to Concordia University and become a teacher. My colleagues were surprised by my resignation. Why are you leaving, Jane? I heard you were getting married. Going to be a stay-at-home wife? Dominic's a lucky guy. One colleague joked. I smiled, holding my boxes. No, the wedding's off. When I got home, I found Dominic and Beverly sitting on the couch, my first sight of Dominic in a week. He saw my boxes. What are you doing with all those things? I improvised. Just stuff I don't need anymore. Dominic nodded, surveying the apartment. I've only been gone a week. It seems like a lot less stuff is here. I took the boxes to the bedroom, calmly replying, I just cleaned out some unnecessary junk. Dominic started to speak, but Beverly interrupted. Jane, Dominic worked hard taking me on that trip. Thank you for letting him take wedding photos with me. My dream did come true. Let me treat you to dinner, to thank you both. I'll probably need your help for a while, so I hope you won't mind. Beverly's smug look told me she knew I was unsettled. Since I'd received the pregnancy test results, I hadn't reacted, hadn't even questioned Dominic. So I didn't want any more pointless arguments. In 5 days, I'd be gone, out of Dominic's life. I just wanted to wrap things up here and leave. Seeing my silence, Beverly's eyes welled up. Dominic, is Jane upset? You're getting married, but... Dominic's brow furrowed. He reprimanded me. Beverly wants to thank us, and you're giving her a hard time? It's just dinner. She's not poisoning you. You're going. Before I could speak, he'd already labeled me the villain. Dominic dragged me to the restaurant. As the waiter approached, Dominic ordered, no heavy oil or salt. And no cilantro in any of the dishes. When the food arrived, Dominic served Beverly attentively. Then he pushed a plate of shrimp towards me. Beverly can't eat seafood. This is for you. My appetite vanished. I put down my fork. I'm allergic to shellfish. How ridiculous. After 5 years, Dominic didn't know his girlfriend's shellfish allergy, but he knew Beverly's dietary restrictions perfectly, even down to the cilantro. Dominic looked momentarily bewildered. When he looked at me again, there was a rare flicker of guilt in his eyes. He ordered more dishes. I didn't touch my food, just sipped my water. After dinner, Emily called. Jane, the professor wants to confirm, you're sticking to the normal experimental schedule, right? The lab's first experiment involves a classified project. You might not be able to contact the outside world for a year or 2. My gaze fell on Dominic and Beverly. They walked side by side. Dominic carefully held Beverly's waist as they descended the steps. My voice was calm. Confirmed. Emily sighed in relief. Good. The professor was worried you'd miss your husband. I turned away. The wedding's off. I'm leaving. A questioning voice came from behind. Who's leaving? Dominic heard the last few words after he put Beverly in the car. Realizing he hadn't heard the beginning, I made up an excuse. A friend of mine is leaving soon. Dominic nodded, asking no further questions. Countdown, Day 4. Dominic brought home his and Beverly's wedding photos. He video chatted with Beverly on his phone while showing her the framed pictures, his eyes full of tenderness. Beverly, our wedding photos are ready. The staff said they came out great. I happened to be getting water when he said that. A flicker of embarrassment crossed Dominic's face. He seemed about to say something. I glanced at the photo and commented, "They really are nice." I paid a high price for this photographer, hoping to capture the most loving moments between Dominic and me. I'd imagined feeling immense happiness when I saw the finished photos. Dominic, in his suit, was exactly as handsome as I'd envisioned. The only difference was the bride wasn't me. But I felt no emotion. Since learning about Beverly's pregnancy, my feelings for Dominic had completely vanished. Dominic was taken aback. He realized I hadn't spoken to him properly in a long time, not even sending a message during his week-long trip with Beverly. It was unusual. Beverly continued chattering on the video call. He shook his head, suppressing his unease, assuming I was just exhausted from wedding preparations. 2 days before my departure, I went to the hospital for some medication. I unexpectedly ran into Dominic and Beverly, fresh from a checkup. A rare look of panic flashed across Dominic's face. He started to speak, but Beverly cut him off. She approached me, grabbing my hand and attempting to kneel. Her voice choked with emotion. "Jane, I know you haven't agreed to Dominic and me having a baby, but I can't wait any longer. The doctor says I only have a year left. I really want to see my child born. After the baby is born, I'll leave Dominic immediately. I won't interfere with your relationship." Before I could respond, Dominic pulled Beverly up, his eyes filled with concern. "You're not well enough for this." He turned to me. "Since you know, I won't hide it. Don't worry, this won't affect our wedding." A month ago, I would have been furious, devastated, despairing, consumed by self-doubt. I would have questioned my shortcomings, wondering why Dominic would willingly have a child with another woman. But after this time, I understood. It wasn't my fault. Dominic didn't love me. Because he didn't love me, he could disregard my feelings and do this. I already knew about Beverly's pregnancy and had let go of my feelings for Dominic. Their charade of me being the obstacle was unnecessary. I looked at them silently, then withdrew my gaze. I understand. I took my medicine and left, needing to pack. They hadn't expected my calm reaction. Dominic, in particular, watched my retreating figure with a complex expression. I'd made a fuss about the pregnancy for a month, yet now, knowing the truth, I showed no reaction. A strange unease settled over him, something had changed silently, unbeknownst to him. As I reached the stairs, Beverly grabbed my sleeve. Dominic was far behind. Beverly's true nature emerged. "Jane, how does it feel to watch your fiancé have a baby with another woman?" I didn't want an argument, so I shook her off and left. As I pulled away, Beverly stumbled and fell. I instinctively caught her, but before I could release her, Dominic shouted angrily from behind, "What are you doing?" He'd wondered at my calmness. Now, seeing this scene, he understood. My calm was a facade, I couldn't accept it. Seeing Dominic, Beverly immediately adopted a victim's expression, her eyes red, clutching her stomach. "Dominic, I just wanted to thank Jane for being so magnanimous, but she..." Dominic's face darkened. "Jane, I never expected this from you. Apologize to Beverly immediately." Dominic's accusations made me laugh in anger. "Me apologize? Check the security footage yourself and see if I should apologize." I hadn't expected Dominic to assume I'd tried to push Beverly down the stairs without even checking the footage. Beverly is a patient, a pregnant woman. Would she deliberately harm herself? A flicker of panic crossed Beverly's face. "Forget it, Dominic. Jane's anger is understandable. Let's go." But Dominic refused. "No, she has to apologize to you today." I wouldn't back down. I wouldn't admit to something I hadn't done. Beverly, fearing Dominic would check the security footage and expose her, clutched her stomach, feigning discomfort. Dominic's furious expression instantly turned to worry. He scooped Beverly into his arms and rushed to find a doctor. Watching them leave, I felt a bitter taste spread through me. 20 years of company, 5 years of dating, and I couldn't earn Dominic's trust. Thankfully, I'd woken up and could leave. Dominic didn't return that day. He was probably busy taking care of Beverly. On my last day, I shipped most of my belongings to the lab, leaving only one suitcase. That evening, Dominic returned, still angry. Beverly's still in the hospital. She's a patient, her pregnancy is unstable. Even if you didn't mean to, couldn't you be more magnanimous? Why be so petty? Magnanimous. I thought I'd been incredibly magnanimous. I'd given up my wedding dress and photographer to Beverly, and I'd let her have the man who was about to be my husband. Now, I was giving up my place in Dominic's life to Beverly. Dominic noticed the large red circle on the calendar and softened slightly. All right, the wedding's tomorrow. I won't argue. Apologize to Beverly after the wedding, then we'll go on our honeymoon. Have you planned the itinerary? I didn't answer. If Dominic had paid attention, he'd have noticed the complete lack of wedding decorations. Before I could confess, Dominic's phone rang. Beverly's voice. Dominic's expression tightened. Wait, I'll be right there. He left immediately. Beverly's not feeling well. I'll go see her. I'll be back before the wedding. Meet me at the cathedral tomorrow morning. After the door closed, the words I'd been holding back finally escaped. We're breaking up, Dominic. The wedding is off. My voice faded into the empty room. Only the ticking clock remained. I sat in the living room from night until dawn. My phone buzzed. 2 hours until my flight. I went to the bedroom, took my suitcase, and a marker. I crossed out the large circle around the 10th on the calendar. Then I wrote, Dominic, we're breaking up. I placed the calendar in plain sight, grabbed my suitcase, took one last look at the place I'd lived for 5 years, and hailed a cab to the airport. Goodbye, Dominic.